The Jersey Swap podcast is sponsored by Apollo Home. Apollo Home wants to remind you that during this weird in-between season of summer and fall, now is the perfect time to get your HVAC system checked out before the cold winter snap hits. We're bringing back the $29 coupon for CST listeners for your pre-season furnace tune-up. And as always, keep them in mind for any electrical or plumbing needs. Give them a call, send them a text, or schedule online at apollohome.com. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the final regular season episode of the Jersey Swap podcast. We've made it through 33 regular season matches, 3 cup tournaments. If you count the Open Cup, it does in my mind. And that Mammoth Club World Cup in the middle. You've gotten all past that consumption, so you can at least chew on a little postseason jerky, right? We're going to call this episode your aperitif because we've got a little more to digest. We have with us Coach Brad Gough from the live show and Talking Tactics to help us press on. How are you doing tonight, Coach?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. And to see behind the scenes on Jersey Swap, I love your eloquent intros and everything. And now I get to just see how that is happening in real time. And I got to say, it's a little less impressive now that I'm here. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, maybe it's the Donna's Donuts hat in the background. One of the best donut places in Massachusetts, bar none. They don't pay me to say that. But anyways, we just wanted to have you on because this is going to be a special episode. For us, it's the big 4-0, the 40th episode of the season. And we're bringing in a special guest to help us process everything we've seen in this FCC season. You know him as part of the Soccerwise crew. We know him as Mr. Dr. David Goss. How are you doing, David?
Got an upgrade.
Yeah, I know. I didn't realize that I had to go through all of schooling just to get here and come out with a doctorate, but this would have been quicker than going to college in any way. So I appreciate that.
I think you can probably school us a little bit. You know, I'm just a mister to a lot of people out there, if that. Should we call you David?
Where in Massachusetts do you live?
I used to live in Billerica.
Okay.
So right outside of Lowell, 30 minutes from Boston.
Okay.
Representing Portland Hearts of Pine tonight. Yeah,
I went to college in Boston, so we were going full circle on all of that.
There you go. We wanted to bring you in just to discuss a little bit about what the FCC Cincinnati, the Cincinnati season's been like. And by all means, you are probably one of the experts now associating yourself with Soccerwise and Kickback. I thought maybe to start off, if you could tell us a little bit about what the Kickback committee and all of this is.
Yeah, so I launched Soccerwise with Tom Bogert and Jordan Angeli a little over a year ago, so that we could cover MLS, NWSL, and USL the way we wanted to, talking the topics we wanted to talk about, talking about what fans want to hear, and doing it as often as possible and as often as we wanted to. So after doing that for a while, we formed together with a bit of a larger group to build a larger media company. So Kickback is a group where we have people who are experts in social media and production, creative design, brand sales, all of that type of stuff that we're mixing all together to hopefully build something bigger in the soccer world and something that we are able to start to put together any type of project we want. For now, we launched one new show with Susanna Fuller, who I worked with at Major League Soccer for a while and hosted at CBS, called the Kickback Committee, where we have sort of it's like an international roster. We call in players who are in our orbit every once in a while when we can. So Brianna Pinto, who plays for North Carolina FC, is part of that. Mark Anthony Kay, who plays for the San Jose Earthquakes and Canadian national team, a part of that as well. Matt Doyle, likes to come hang out. Andrew Weeby, when we get a chance. Claudio Pagan. So a lot of different people that we really enjoy working with and talking soccer with. And we've got a number of different social channels. We've got a newsletter. So just trying to cover the game every which way we possibly can. And we've had a lot of fun so far, and we're looking forward to having more.
It's pretty awesome that you're covering NWSL. I'll just put that out there. It feels like Soccerwise and Kickback is sort of an ability to maybe fill a niche that hasn't been filled yet.
Yeah, I think for me, I worked freelance for a long time, but mainly around Major League Soccer, and I enjoyed it a ton. I got to cover a lot of stuff I really enjoyed, the Generation Adidas Cup, playoffs, Open Cups and stuff. But in sort of looking at, okay, what do I want to do? I wanted to cover the best league in the world that's located here in the U.S., and Major League Soccer is nowhere near that and maybe never will be. And I think NWSL is the best league in the world when it comes to women's soccer, and it's right on our doorstep. So it was a huge opportunity for me to jump in and cover it for the first time. You're like, been a fan, been to a bunch of games, all that type of stuff, watch, of course, but to cover it has been completely different. And it's been really, really fun and exciting. And I'm lucky to have Jordan, who, if you turn on NWSL Weekend, you'll hear her voice about 4 games a weekend. So she's an expert, and I'm just trying to keep up, but it's been really, really good. And I think a chance for me to bring what I believe I'm good at, which is that mix of tactical and big picture conversations around the sport, and bring it to another league and sort of another fan base.
I'm just grateful that you said NWSL when you said the best league in America, because I thought you were heading towards Tom's men's league updates. And I was like, hold on. We don't need to go.
It's Thursday night. I should get a call from a police station soon saying I could go pick him up.
So, David, we are so grateful that you took the time to come on. We were hoping to get some national perspective on Cincinnati. We know you watch a ton of soccer, NWSL and MLS. And so we thought we'd start by asking you, here in Cincinnati, we have seen the doldrums. We've also been spoiled a bit. And now we're in this weird place where our team looks like it's at the top of the table, but when you watch the games, it doesn't always feel like that. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, what has kept FC Cincinnati from actually, being the team that we all, I think you guys on Soccerwise too, expected them to be?
It's one of the weirdest seasons that I can possibly think of in Major League Soccer. And I assume that's the feeling inside the fan base. So yeah, I'm not going to bring anything new. I assume everyone stumbled on the same numbers that some of the ASA people put out over the last 2 weeks about expected points and how far over FC Cincinnati's. And it's, you just look at the standings and you look at the goal differences of the teams around them, and everyone's plus 19, plus 25, and FC Cincinnati's plus 9. And so it's been a bizarre year in that some of the things that have always worked, it feels like haven't clicked. I think injuries are obviously a huge factor in all of this. I think some of it is the change. Even though Evander has been MVP level, it is still a change for a lot of people to play with someone new and play off someone new. And it just has felt like the whole year there have been flash moments, but there hasn't been cohesive flow, whether it's from game to game or inside of a full 90 minutes. There hasn't been these long stretches where you're like, there they are. That's a Supporters Shield winning team. That's an MLS Cup team, where I think over the last 3 years, there have been a large amounts of time where that's how I felt. And so I can't really put my finger on a game where you felt Cincinnati suffocate the opponent, and it was chance after chance after chance for the entire stretch of a half. And that had been the story with this team for so many games over the last 3+ years and under Pat Noonan. And so it's just been a weird season, and yet the results have continued to come. And you talked about the doldrums. I think it's the right fan base to at least take this, and maybe some others would say oh, this isn't good enough, where it's it could be a lot worse.
Yeah. That's definitely a way to put it, because you look at the point system here. For most of the second half of the season, you were seeing 7, 8, 9 teams still available for getting on top of the mountain and winning that Supporters Shield. It felt like a weird season in that. No one's getting over 70 points.
No, it's been a bizarre season overall in the league. And the big one for me that I've come back to all week, because we did our over-under show on Soccerwise, where Doyle had come on preseason and set these lines, because no one really does them around Major League Soccer. And that's why we built this, because we wanted to be the place to do the things we wish we had. And so we did an over-under line, and then we made our picks, and we went and reviewed both the lines and our picks. And the big story is just how good the Eastern Conference is. Mm-hmm. The reality is there's a chance Columbus goes over the points mark that we set for them preseason, and they're a wild card team. We're talking Nantes Columbus, that we would call a cup contender the last 3 years, could be the 8th or 9th seed in the East, and yet finish over the points mark preseason that we expected from them, which at the time would have been last year 3rd or 4th in the Eastern Conference. So that is throwing everything up in the air of understanding where these teams are, right? The Cincinnati's point mark at this point should be enough to comfortably at the top of a conference. And it would be if they were in the West. And yet we're questioning them, and we're questioning Nashville and NYCFC and Charlotte off and on. as they all put together some of the best seasons in their club's history.
David, do you think there's something too then with how tight things have been in the Eastern Conference, and it's been a meat grinder. Like any team can beat anyone on any given day. When we did our show where we talked about what team do we hope to face in the first round of the playoffs, we were like none of the above. It all sucks.
Can we face someone from the West maybe instead? Yeah.
Do you think there's something too then the fact that when FC Cincinnati gets up by a goal or gets up by 2 goals, they seem to just like pack it in and almost hold on and try to get through a 1-goal lead? Is that a deficiency? Are they not going for it? Are they not stepping on the opponent's throats? Or do you think that some of this is just the quirks of the competitive conference they're in?
No, I think that if this was the team last year or 2 years ago, I think they would have closed out some of these games that we have seen. And I think part of the challenge is the teams you're playing against are so good that they can break back against you. But it hasn't felt like, I think one of Cincinnati's strengths over the last few years have been that they are one of the teams that have over-indexed into their style, which is what Philadelphia has done. I think Nashville's been really good at that this year, where it's like in those down moments, it all still keeps moving in the same direction. And I think Cincinnati having those gaps in like who they are in big moments has opened the game back up. And these are the opponents that are capable of taking advantage of it. I would think that this team last year or 2 years ago would still be able to put some of these teams away and would probably be the Supporters' Shield winner.
I'm looking at this team then. I mean, I think a lot of people can sort of circle the attack being one of the, not in a deficiency, but something of they could be so much more meteoric in this situation. And then you take a look at where they take their shots way outside of the box. Do you feel that this team is afraid of penetrating the box and attacking that way?
Yeah, I think that's one of the issues. I think one of the issues is they don't win the ball back as high as often. So you're not playing in transition moments already in the attack, because that's what Cincinnati has been allowed to do over the last 3 years, or allowed themselves to do, is they win the ball back, but they're already in attacking areas. Now, when you win it a little bit deeper, you have to get into those attacking areas. And then the other big thing is it feels like the play of the wingbacks and getting the wingbacks in higher positions and having them stay in higher positions. And I think a lot of that goes down to the health of Miazga and Robinson and when and where the center backs have been. And of course, the injuries in central midfield, where I think there's less confidence for like a Barrial just never defended, which is great. You don't have to. We've got 5 guys to cover for you, and they're all really good at what they do. And I think there's a little bit less trust this year. And so I think we see the wingbacks playing a little bit deeper. They're getting to the end line less often. We're seeing less of those pullbacks, even in some of the good moments over the last few weeks where I think there's been some high points. A lot of the crosses they're not deep crosses, but they're not from the end line. And like that was Cincinnati's bread and butter over the last 2 years.
Yeah. And so, you touched on the lack of availability. Availability is the best ability, so to speak. And this team has faced a lot of injuries. So have other teams. So it's not an excuse. But, we have a guy in Miles Robinson who has been pretty steady since coming back from the Achilles injury in terms of not missing time due to injury. But he's missing big chunks of time for national team and for others things. Do you think that making Miles Robinson a DP next year and basically naming him as like he's going to be the rock of the back line, even if Miazga stays or goes, do you think that could be a mistake? Or do you think locking a guy like that, who is a U.S. international, one of the best defenders in the league, is a no-brainer?
I think being in a win now mode with a good team, I like keeping it together. I like the idea of, okay, like the way I would think about this is, between Miazga and Miles, I've got a DP level game-changing position because you've got Miazga on a pretty good deal. So like, that's how I would look at it. And obviously Miles came on the short-term deal coming out of Atlanta because he couldn't get bumped up to the DP contract immediately because of MLS rules, but didn't really see the door overseas that he had expected. And I think that was not fortunate, because I think Cincinnati did a good job of getting themselves in that conversation, but that's a pickup you're probably not normally going to get. And so I like the idea of just trying to continue to ride that momentum and say, let's keep this guy in. We talked with Chris Albright, I think it was the beginning of this season, at Generation Adidas Cup, sitting in Florida. And he said, like, we won't always be in win now. We're not going to spend $20 million all the time, because that's not the way a team is built. And I respect that. I think that There should be ebbs and flows. So I think registering this, and one of the things, and I don't know, we'll talk about Gauss theorem. It's the one thing I have to my name, is it takes guys a while to get used to Major League Soccer. I think it's going to be the story with Denke. You know, it was the story with Brenner. It's the story with so many players, including defenders. So taking away the danger of the next signing taking time while you're in a win now mode by overpaying, let's say, a center back, I think is fine because the roster is well built. And this is not a club where you're saying, how do we get from 12th to 3rd? Well, let's go out and sign a DP center back.
That's a good sort of transition point. I was going to talk a little bit about this later on, talking about the front office. And really, if you see the difference between last season and this season, last season, it felt like they were hunting for things that never felt their way. This year, they had the opportunity to pick up some big pieces. You know, Brenner came through the window, surprisingly, Ender Echenike, and even Ayub Jabari, who we haven't seen him score yet, but he's got some flashes of speed and height to him. How would you sort of grade how this front office has done this? Maybe we'll narrow it down just to the summer.
I think the Brenner deal alone probably gives you a B plus or an A, because you're bringing in a guy who you had paid $10 million for almost nothing. And you're doing it at a time when there wasn't really other available moves. So I think that move alone, there's only so much you could do in central midfield because you've already have that much money allocated to a player who's out for the rest of the season, but a player who's a big part of what you do. And so you're not going to put them on, you know, you're not going to cut the contract or buy them out or anything like that. So I think inside of the restrictions they've had, they've done very well. And I would say this is a group, as you mentioned, that like continues to find deals unexpectedly. I mean, the Marchuk deal as well. Like I know he's underwhelmed a bit, and that's been frustrating for me because I really like him as a player. And I was underwhelmed at RSL. Now I'm underwhelmed a bit at Cincinnati, but that's a deal by itself that I would have been impressed by. And that's on top of some of the other moves that they made.
Can I ask you about some of those moves? Because we know, Matt Doyle and others like to pretend that they're the play the kids guy, but we know, David, that you are the original, the guy calling Generation Adidas Cup games is the play the kids guy. I wonder, we've seen Albright bring in these really talented, seemingly talented youngsters, Jabari, Sammy Gidi, that have looked really good. They look like they could be potentially really good pickups. But also, we've seen guys within the system that are kind of on the border of breaking through. Dado Valenzuela, Steven Jimenez, Kenji Mbomadem, Stefan Chirilla, and bringing in some of these guys. Jabari probably bumps Chirilla to a straight FCC 2 guy, and probably Mbomadem too, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
How do you balance like bringing in these high upside international players with also not clogging your own pipeline? We've seen teams like Philadelphia do it really successfully. I'm not sure Albright's hit that balance quite yet.
Yeah, we could say Philly's done it well, but they also missed the playoffs last year. And so it's not an easy, to the point of the ebbs and flow, like it's not an easy process. It's not perfected. Often I think we from the outside like to say like, oh, leave that roster spot open for the 4 homegrowns to fight for. And, and I think Red Bulls are one of the teams that have done that, and Red Bulls have struggled in regular seasons because young players are less consistent and it's harder to get performances week after week from them. I think Dado's gotten a lot of minutes. I think he's looked good. And I think he's fit into a place where it feels like he's a part of the conversation for Pat Noonan and his staff fairly consistently. And especially with the success of the club, you look at Leagues Cup, you look at Conca Champions, you look at all these different competitions where you can roll those players out and get them minutes. But it is really, really tough. I think it's one of the things that maybe the U22 initiative has pushed back, because it's this opening for teams that want to spend, but then they have to spend on players who then fill these holes where, okay, we've got X experimental minutes. Who are we going to give them to and who are we not? I would say that I think that Pat Noonan and Chris Albright and their groups understand the value of bringing through homegrowns. And I think if they felt Steven Jimenez was ready and Dado was ready to be the full-time guy, and at times Dado has gotten that chance, that they would open it up for them. And so to me, from the outside, seeing it is not, some clubs I would say is them playing scared. Like they don't want to play the kids. They're worried about what it means. I don't feel that way about this Cincy group. I've talked to them about it. Like they're passionate about building up the academy and making it a huge part of this club. I would question some of the like, oh, we have to go out and find people out of market all the time. Like, you would know better than me what soccer in Ohio and Cincinnati looks like, but I'm of the opinion of like, there's players everywhere. If you're coaching them the right way, yeah, you can go recruit some, but I don't know that everyone needs to be recruited from outside of the market. But I think that this is a club that has an idea that they want this to be a part of their identity, and they know the sustainability that it brings you in terms of roster building down the road and all of that.
I know you're bringing up Pat Noonan's coaching ability, especially his connections with Chris Albright. It's interesting we're bringing this up because I was asked this question by the Montreal guy, if Pat Noonan is still a viable choice as coach. And I looked at him as if he had 15 eyes.
Yeah.
And so I guess the question I have, the fans here also express frustration. Granted, you get it from the void that is social media sometimes. So I guess the question is, what about his coaching game should justify keeping him in the long run, especially when an extension gets talked about?
Well, I would say the sustained success since he's gotten there is the start of it. And the big blip on his resume would probably be Lucho Acosta. And I think FC Dallas made him look even better because they're basically undefeated since Lucho left their club. And so then the blame, I think, shifts from any sort of Pat Noonan situation into probably Lucho is the common denominator in all of that. And I think he's a coach who has a clear idea of how he wants a team to play, which in Major League Soccer, I think is actually even more valuable than other leagues. Because of the salary cap, you have to find advantages than just pure talent. And one of the things that you get is if you have a clear system, you can identify players that are maybe not as useful to other teams. And when you bring them in, they're more useful to you. And then you can get deals on players like that. And I think Pat Noonan understands that. And so he has built a system that Chris Albright can then go and recruit players into and recruit the right types of players and the players that fit for you. And on top of all that, though, he has still been flexible, right? He has moved Orejano around the field. He has changed up from a back four to a back five and found the comfort in there. He has moved Engel into a center back. Maybe it's by necessity, but like he's figured out what an underlap looks like differently than having a Barrial who's a wide wing back that is always staying high. Like that changes your shape a little bit. So I think he's been open enough to shift within the parameters of having a clear idea. And I would say in Major League Soccer, that's like the first thing I want is an identity that you can clearly define and that you can build a team into. And there's nothing from a record point of view that I would say makes you think that Pat Noonan shouldn't be a part of it. Knockouts are knockouts. Like one game eliminations, they're absurd. It sucks that we all think about it so highly. I'm so excited for the playoffs because they are absurd and the whole thing is broken. But the hair margin between winning and losing in an Eastern Conference Finals, like I don't think that's something for a club that went from being the worst team in the history of the league to an Eastern Conference Final in the span that Noonan got them there would then come off that saying, oh, now we have to move on to the next era.
Yeah, and I'm the furthest guy in the world from a Noonan out guy. I think Pat Noonan has done.
I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, it's a dark corner of the Cincinnati webs, but even within Cincinnati Soccer Talk, we have guys saying, if Noonan doesn't get it done, his seat's got to be getting warm, right? And I'm like, no, but so to allow me to play this devil's advocate side of this voice that we hear sometimes, and you see Jim Curtin, right? Jim Curtin gets alleviated of his duties at Philadelphia, and all of a sudden they hit a new height. And granted, last year was a bad year for them. They finished 13th. But you see it in other cases. We sing the praises of coaches like Mikey Varis and Jesper Sorensen, who have turned teams around, who have just as big of injury concerns as FC Cincinnati and Pat Noonan has had. You mentioned Wilfred before. And that was him in the past. And this is not me taking a shot at Crew at all. But it actually is, just because it's a Cincinnati podcast and we get to do that, right? And so now, Crew is not as good as they have been. And all of the Joe Lowrys and all the people who have been talking nothing about how Nancy is the greatest thing to ever happen to Major League Soccer, like there's just no mention at all. He has not been able to hit new heights despite the injuries and stuff. So I guess The question for Noonan is there a point if they, next season all of a sudden finish 12th or 13th like Philadelphia, could you see the conversation shifting from, sure, there's been a lot of success, but he's never gotten it done in the big moments when the lights are on, so to speak?
It would still be a stretch for me. I think next season, like, we would still be talking about a guy who had success every year, because let's remind ourselves, this is the second best team in the Eastern Conference right now. All of the lack of successes or turnaround stuff you talked about, Pat Noonan's team is better than all those teams. So that's where I understand the frustration of the way it's played out this year and what they're capable of. And maybe it was a winnable Shield year, because if Philly loses this weekend on 66 points, that's a winnable one. Like, that's maybe one that you look back and say, oh, we could have gotten over the line if we get a couple more results, if it's more cohesive, if the attack clicks quicker or at all at any point. I can get all of that, but I think when you look at across the league, any team would take Pat Noonan. So if that's the case next year, and next year, let's say they miss the playoffs, it will be the first time he missed the postseason. I think that would be really extreme way to go about it. And my guess would be that Chris Albright, who just came from a club that had the same coach for 11 years, and yes, 11 years was enough time, but 11 years is how long Jim Curran got. I think that's where Chris Albright sees the quality and the improvement that you get because you have stability. And there's like no reason that you would want to move away from any of that right now with Cincy.
The Jersey Swap podcast is also sponsored by Beyond Exercise. Beyond Exercise is a local physical therapy and fitness business that helps people stay active and injury-free. In fact, they help some of our local MLS Next Pro, and FCC Academy players with their health and performance needs. Check out their suite of services at gobeyondexercise.com. I think we want to get to go on the non-connecting segue here. I think we want to get finally the meat and potatoes here. You mentioned the David Goss theorem, and I'm just rubbing my palms in the back. I want to, ask you more about this. I know that we have a lot of experienced people out there, but can you remind us what the David Goss theorem is?
Yeah, the Goss theorem is, this is the second time I've been asked this week, so now I'm getting better at explaining it. It's about patience. It is that we have huge expectations, especially for international signings, to be difference makers. And if you go back and you go through our preseason conversations with every single team, including Cincinnati, we're talking about the Denke's of the world. And it's like, this team's going to be better because they brought this player in. And so often they struggle to get comfortable in Major League Soccer. It's because the league is unique. It is the travel. It is the time of the year. It's the weather. It's the opponents. It's the fields. All of that, and moving countries for a lot of people, for a lot of players, especially the ones coming from South America, it's the first time they've ever left their country. So all of that causes a lot of players to struggle in their first year in MLS. And a bunch of those players explode in their second years, one being Evander. Evander, I looked it up because I didn't really process this fully. David DaCosta has more goal contributions combined this year for Portland, not even being a full season, than Evander did his first year. And then Evander went on to have two of the greatest seasons in MLS history. It takes time. And we are in an era where everyone likes to jump to a conclusion and jump on people and, throw people down the drain and all of that. And so I pushed against that, and that ended up being something that I put my name against. And we have, like Evander, some incredible examples of players who went on to be club legends, league legends, MVPs, winning MLS Cups, all of that for players in their second years, or if they came in the summer towards their second season.
Can you give maybe this year's best attempt at a David Goss theorem fit in terms of MLS? I know we're talking FCC, but we're going to eventually get to that.
Okay.
Who do you think is the crown in terms of applying the David Goss theorem this year?
So this season, there's a few that popped. Some of them have gone up and down. Luis Muriel was in the lead running for this. He was a train wreck of a designated player signing. It was like Orlando staked their name on this guy, and it completely fell apart. And then he came back, has 10 goals this year, which has been good, but most of them were scored in the first half of the year, and that was a really hot streak for him. Petar Musa, I think, is going to be one of the ones who leads this conversation. He was good last year. Me and Michele created this fake MVP that he's eligible for, even though his team won't make the playoffs because we like, I don't know, making up ways that you're valuable and all these types of things. And I think he will fight for a best 11 spot as well, even though every Golden Boot, candidate is in there right now. But he's one where I think next year we're looking at a player, if he comes back, we are talking about as one of the 3 or 4 best in their position, leading the line from the front. But Hugo Kuipers, huge bounce back year, right? His second year. A lot of the guys I'm talking about are like true finishers, because that's all about timing. It's all about understanding of the defenses and the spacing and your team. And so a lot of these guys, it takes them a year or two, and then they can settle in. And for many of them, we then turn back and we're like, oh, this is a guy you could rely on, right? This is a guy you feel sure of. And yet Ty Baribo didn't score a lot of goals, came out this year, exploded, and then was able to lead his team. So there's a few candidates this year. There's not an Evander, I think, which is like the one which went from to an MVP. But there is, I think, a lot of good candidates.
It doesn't feel like FC Cincinnati has a good 2025 Goss theorem candidate, and if anything, we have the reverse. Orshano had a pretty good year last year. It has kind of been middling at best this year. So I wonder if we could, put the prediction glasses on and look ahead to 2026. You talked about pure finishers. If you had to project a guy that you think has a really good chance to be a Goss theorem candidate in 26, would you look at like a Kevin Denke, who's had a good season but not great, or would you look for somebody maybe a little less heralded but who has also shown flashes, an Echenike or somebody like that?
No, I think it's a Denke, where you look at it and you say, you see all the attributes of a player next year that is unplayable. Like one of those players where it's like, it doesn't matter how you defend him. It doesn't matter where. I mean, look at the goal against Red Bulls. We're talking about a player who he decides in a moment, I'm just going to be the goalkeeper. And we've seen that a couple times. We just haven't seen it super consistently, and we haven't seen him create maybe as much as we thought we would for other players around him. And I think a lot of that comes from like, okay, now the game starts to slow down, and now you can start to anticipate your team's movements, the other team's movements a little bit more, and the game just gets a little bit easier. So, no, I think Denke is going to be one that's at the top of the list league-wide for Goss theorem next year, and that bodes pretty well for a guy who's still putting up pretty good numbers in year one.
Yeah, I sort of have Samuel Gidi in the back of my mind a little bit. I think he has the potential to break out and do good stuff in the middle. But Ender Echenike, if he sticks around and becomes that's finally that strike along the edge that we're missing, that he doesn't get to the line as much. If he can do that, I think he's going to be a good bounce back candidate for tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. I think we want to also wrap up a little bit. Just a quick question, if you can divulge it. Do you have any season superlatives that you want to sort of like crown right now? Or do you need to like see the last game of the season to determine some of these?
I need to see the last game. I also I don't know, the more we can get, the easier it gets. I feel pretty good. The one that we've talked about a lot this week, I feel fairly safe on Coach of the Year. I think it'll be Jesper Sorensen. The way that Vancouver has competed in Conca Champions and then also competed in the league, they won a Canadian championship. It's almost unprecedented to do that well in both those tournaments. The problem is they didn't win any of them except for the Canadian championship. And that will be an issue because Bradley Carnell had an incredible year. And like what we said on the show today is there are for sure 3 candidates who any other year would have won it. Mikey Varis in San Diego, Jesper Sorensen in Vancouver, and Bradley Carnell. BJ Callahan pushing in as well as a team that took a huge jump, changed their style, won US Open Cup, which you're not supposed to use in voting. Fine, whatever. All of them are really phenomenal candidates, but I feel fairly safe that it's on Sorensen. Messi is going to be MVP of Major League Soccer. Whether I vote for him or not, he's going to win, but he deserves to win it this year compared to some of the other years. And it's been fun to watch him play, and it's always fun to watch him play soccer. So I feel pretty good on those two. Andres Dreyer is newcomer of the year because I think he's an MVP finalist, and he's the only one who will be a newcomer in that conversation. So that one is one that, while he is clearly the best, it's actually a really good category this year. A number of teams have hit really quickly on some of their additions. Marco Pasalic, one of them that we've seen for Orlando, who's been really, really impressive so far this season. So those were ones where it's like, I can't imagine what happens in the last week that changes the top of those, but it will probably change who else I would see in as finalists in some of those categories.
Yeah. All three of those names that you mentioned, I voted for as well.
There you go.
There you go. We're same mind, same mind. We're going to close things out here. I almost don't want to let you go, but you know, we do have time limits, and I'm sure you've had 2 hours with Doyle and
it's
Tommy
been a
Scoops today. It's been a long day, man.
Yeah, it has been a long day, but if you didn't listen to it yet, we did our over-unders on our show. We also talked decision day, but the over-unders was a cool way to sort of retouch on the seasons for a lot of teams. So quick recaps of what we expected from them, and then that sort of gives you the report card of where a lot of teams landed. And I made some really, really bad picks in the preseason, and I will do so again next year.
Makes me feel really good about my preseason picks too. Glad none of my picks were laminated, so Austin FC can't use them for, you know, bulletin board material.
No, they cannot. But Owen Wolf can if he wants to.
Absolutely. So yeah, we'll just close it out. You know, tell us once again, remind us where we can find you guys, Soccerwise, and all that, and give the floor is yours for the end here.
Yeah, you can follow Soccerwise HQ for all our social media handles, and then Kickback Committee is our other show as well, and we are cross-promoting across all of them. Soccerwise, we're coming live at least 3 times a week with myself, Tom Bogert, and Jordan Angeli talking MLS and NWSL, talking national teams, talking about the World Cup a lot now because we're really, really excited about that, and that's one of my favorite stories in all of soccer. So if you love any of these leagues, if you love the game, if you just like talking and hanging out and having someone fill some of your time and someone that you can engage with and interact with, you can follow us anywhere on social media, anywhere you get your podcast, on YouTube as well. And if you subscribe to our Patreon, you get access to our Discord and you can come and hang out and chat with us. There are a lot of Cincinnati fans in there. It is one of the heavy markets. There's a lot of Columbus fans in there, a lot of Minnesota as well. So we're hanging out somewhere in the Midwest most often.
I think that's exactly where we can say the headquarters of Soccerwise should be.
We'll take the real estate. It will be cheaper than here in Miami where I live.
It's quite true. That's quite true. So yeah, once again, go check out Soccerwise 3 times a week, YouTube, Blue Sky. You guys are all over Blue Sky too. It's awesome to see you guys.
We are loving our time on Blue Sky. It feels like the original days of social media with sports. Like, you used to not be able to search anything for a long time over the last few years. And now it's like, oh, I can, what happened to Roman Celentano? Boom. You can finally search things and see people that are talking about it instead of going out and trying to find 87 different writers who follow things and whatnot. So yeah, we're really enjoying our time on Blue Sky, and we'd encourage anyone to come over who hasn't yet.
Yeah, I'm already there, Coach. Maybe you should join us there. Join the revolution.
Been there a long time.
There you
At
go.
FC Cincinnati Talk for me.
Hell yes.
So once again, you know, on behalf of everybody here, if you guys want to listen to any of our podcasts, go to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Go to Apple Plus. Go to Spotify. All of these locations that play our podcasts. You can go check out the ones from the live show that Coach is all over as well. Coach, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thanks, David. Really enjoyed getting to talk to you guys.
So once again, I say this to all of my guests on behalf of myself, on behalf of Coach, on behalf of this guy down here who joined us. Thank you very much, David Goss. Keep your kit clean, and we'll play for another 90 minutes. Thanks a lot, guys.